All right, this is a much anticipated episode. We are in Kansas visiting with Michael Hunsucker. Michael is the co-founder and also co-host of Heartland Bowhunter. You get to check out some of his favorite bucks and animals he's tagged over the years, hear his favorite stories, and check out his bow shop in his basement. We hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go.
Whoa, fancy meeting you here. What's going on? Come on in, everybody. I'm Michael Hunsucker with Heartland Bowhunter. Welcome to my Whitetail Crib. We're gonna start things in my office here. I work a lot from here when I'm actually in town. This is where I spend most of my time, but got a couple deer in here that are pretty special to me. This is actually my second biggest whitetail ever with a bow. It was my biggest whitetail for a long, long time. Shot it with my buddy Nate up in North Dakota. He waterfowl guides up there and had been guiding there for a couple years and really was mainly focused on ducks and waterfowl, but he was like, man, there's some good bucks and we have a crazy early season. And so he's like, it opens in late August. He's like, you should come up. We were just getting started with HB at the time. And so we finally made it trip up there. He had some nice deer on camera, but we hadn't seen anything like this buck. And first night in the stand, boom, this deer walks out and I was able to shoot him at like 10 yards and over a water hole. It was just nuts. I mean, the biggest deer we had pictures of before that was probably like a 125, 130 inch, 8-point or something. So I was just like, I never killed a velvet buck. I wasn't gonna be holding out for anything spectacular, but 175 inch full velvet come out. So that's a pretty special buck for me. So he stays in the office, hangs out with me all the time. I do have a couple Golden Moose Awards from Outdoor Channel from the different shows, a couple from Heartland Bowhunter, a couple from Heartland Waterfowl. Pretty proud of those though. We've been doing this a long time, and as you guys know that do know us, we put a lot of effort into the production quality, and so it's nice to get some rewards from the network. But this is a pretty cool buck. I just got this one back actually. My buddy Bruce down in Kansas did this mount for me, and I'd always wanted to do a velvet Euro mount, and they're really hard to do because obviously if you boil the head or you bury the head or whatever, you can damage the velvet. So they actually detached the antlers, freeze dried and cured the velvet on the antlers, and then reattached them to the skull. So pretty unique. I don't have any other velvet Euros. He's just sitting here on the table. I just got him, but I'm probably gonna display him in another way. I got a couple hangers. I'm a respectful husband, so I don't completely redneck out the house. Obviously, you can see the couch and the decorations I did. My wife is more in charge of hanging the deer and stuff. So no, I'm just teasing. But got some awesome mule deer bucks up here. We kind of went with the Western theme in the living room, I guess. This is my first mule deer ever with a bow from the Sandhills of Nebraska on the left, and then a couple Montana velvet mule deer bucks from the past few seasons. If you guys haven't been mule deer hunting, man, it's hard to beat that rush with a bow. For me, growing up in the Midwest, never had mule deer hunted. I'll never forget my first mule deer buck. I think I shot that buck on like the 8th day of the hunt, and I had blown so many stalks, just waiting for like the perfect opportunity. Like in the whitetail woods, you're in a stand, the deer have no idea they're walking. You can stop them, you can settle in, you can pick a spot. Out there, you're on their time, and so it was crazy, man. It was such a rush to even to get in position, you're in bow range, you can have a shot, and the deer has no idea. You pulled off that feat. And up here above the fireplace, biggest elk with a bow from Montana from 3 years ago, and I actually drew that same tag again this year, so I'll be heading back there for my first hunt of the year here in a couple weeks. So pretty excited about that. I got a couple different bulls from that area of Montana. So I haven't done a ton of elk hunting, but when I do draw a tag and get a chance to do it, it's a lot of fun. So now we'll get to the area my wife designed. No, I'm kidding. This is the man cave down here. We were able to finish the basement and do some of the lighting, get some of the lighting ourselves, which was nice. Kind of put a wall of display for all the animals. But we'll start right here with obviously the elephant in the room, or the bear in the room, I should say. But This is the bear I killed at Kodiak Island, Alaska. I shot it 3 or 4 springs ago with my buddy Cole that actually was my brother's best friend. Grew up here just outside of Kansas City, Missouri, and went up to be a guide in Alaska. So we started doing some hunts with him, but we'll come back to this bear hunt at the end. So stay tuned because you're gonna wanna see the footage of me shooting him at like 12 yards. The only turkey I have mounted, I take that back, I do have a bearded hen mounted, but this is the only gobbler I have mounted. And this is actually or at one point in time, I think it still is, but the largest, heaviest turkey ever shot with a bow in Missouri, at 29.1 pounds. So Sean and I were actually hunting. It was kind of a late morning hunt. We heard this bird fire up and we just like sat down as quick as we could, like no blind, just kind of brushed in real quick. And he came on a string right to us, came in perfect. I shot him and he went crash in the field, and we walked out there, and I'll never forget like walking up on him. I was just like, oh my gosh. I was like, look at the size of these feet. His feet were just giant, and he had obviously really nice spurs too, but just the size of his feet were just overwhelming. I picked him up, you know, you could tell just by the size. He was a stout bird. Had no idea he was gonna be 29 pounds. I grabbed a fishing scale, threw him on there, and I was like, oh man, I was like 29.1 pounds. Like, there's no way this is right. This scale's an old cheap scale, there's no way. So I actually got my bathroom scale out, weighed myself, and then weighed myself with the bird, and I was like, 29 pounds. I was like, holy cow. So I was like looking at the NWTF records, and I was like, oh my gosh, like a lot of people have killed, not a lot, but several people have killed 30-pound plus birds with shotguns, but not a lot of people bow hunt turkeys. And so I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, that is going to be the heaviest ever killed with a bow in Missouri. So pretty cool, pretty special turkey. Then we got a variety of bucks. I kind of try to keep them in like, you know, little sections of bucks from certain areas. So like these two both are from northeast Wyoming. This is one of the oldest bucks that I have ever killed. I shot out there. I'm not sure if he's 7 or 8. I want to say that we thought he was, but just a crazy gnarly buck, really compact. Actually had a shed off of him from the year before, so you can kind of see, you know, how he kind of grew. But a wild buck for sure. Really cool hunt in the snow. It was one of those deals. We went out in November, and it just got a nasty cold front and just dumped snow. And we had like a foot of snow, and it was like 5 degrees, just crazy, brutal weather, but made for some really, really interesting hunting. It was almost like a combination of rut and late season. They were keyed on food, but they were also real ruddy, so super easy to call to. And we were able to call this buck in and shoot him. This is my biggest deer from Wyoming. And actually, yeah, we just released this hunt, and this was a pretty cool hunt for me because we had never hunted it before. And we got there before season had opened. I was like, you know, it's a new place, and that's like one of my favorite things as a bow hunter. You know, I've been doing it a long time, and I love bow hunting no matter what. But I really enjoy going to a new property I haven't spent any time on, and just kind of dissecting it, learning about it, you know, checking it out. And that was one of those situations. We got there, we scouted for like 2 or 3 days, you know, before season. And actually, I think season opened, and we still didn't hunt because we didn't really have a great idea. We had a good idea of what the deer were doing, but we weren't sure exactly where we wanted to set up, what we wanted to do, and we were just trying to tread lightly. So actually ended up making a move, hanging a stand, and killing this deer the first night in. So pretty cool deer, and just really unique. I don't have many that are like transitioning from velvet to hardhorn, so that's pretty cool. This deer right here is my Missouri buck from last year from up at our place up north. This deer was, I mean, it was pretty cool. It was a October time frame, so like, you know, we got past like the patternable early season stage of the season, and we're kind of transitioning into like, all right, once we get that little cold snap in October, it's going to be money. And so we actually set up the spot, put a blind out, mowed some corn because we knew this cold front was coming. We waited 3 days. The cold front came in, north wind, everything was perfect. We were just absolutely covered in deer, and had like a really, really intense hunt because there was just deer all over us, on edge, kind of nervous by the time he got to the food plot, and he was just kind of on edge, and we were trying to shoot out of the left side of the blind, just because I just knew, amen, the field was going to clear, they were going to blow. And so ended up getting a shot. It was a hard quartered shot, and actually, you know, it was a good shot, but it was one of those ones that just does not leave much of a blood trail. And so this was crazy. I mean, we looked for him that night. We looked for blood, didn't find any. I was like, all right, we're going to leave him until the morning. And we looked and pins and needles, hands and knees. Probably one of the craziest track jobs I've ever had on a deer. And I kept coming back to the last blood, and every time I would get the like whiff of deer. And I'm like, man, you smell that? Like I keep smelling this deer. And I couldn't tell. I had shot a doe the day before, and so I didn't know if it was on my clothes, like the smell of deer, I didn't know. And sure enough, I like started like just backtracking and trying to follow it, and the wind was rolling off the hill because because it was out of the north, but it was actually coming, I was smelling from the south. And so made my way around, found another drop of blood, another old bed, and I stood up and looked, and he was laying right there. So it was wild. I mean, just like one of those situations where, I mean, we were close to him. We'd been within 80 yards of him for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just could not find him. Finally we laid eyes on him. So this is a really cool buck. This is from the Lindsay's farm up in Iowa, Jeff and David, and I shot that one 2 seasons ago. So I'd hunted that farm the two years before that, so I was familiar with the area. I shot a really nice buck on that place the 2 seasons before, and was hunting this deer and a couple other deer, and it was just the rut, middle of the rut. On this particular day, we had got out of the stand and grabbed a bite to eat, and we're getting back into a different stand, going to this stand, and I look up on the edge of the field, and I just see him just cruising, and it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, gosh, I was like, we missed our opportunity. We should have been in the stand. And so we watched him, and we kind of worked our way in, and we watched him work off. And so we drop into the bottom, jump in the stand, and we're like, all right, maybe he'll like cruise around real quick, and so we're sitting there, and he never did show up. And so, and I was like, dang it, he's not gonna come, I was like, I'm checking on my phone, texting some buddies, seeing how everybody else is doing. And Chandler, who was filming me, is actually on like the backside of the tree, so he couldn't see to the left real great. And I'm just like, out of my peripherals, I just like see movement, and I look, and he's standing there at like 20 yards, and I'm like, oh gosh, and he's coming down this old road right to this. There was an old fence, like a gate, and the gate was open. He was coming right to it. We had a trail camera on there. And I was like, tap Chandler. And I stand up, grab my bow, and Chandler stands up, and his like, something rubs on the tree, like, and the buck's like looks up at us. I'm like, no, this is all gonna be over. And thankfully it's the rut, and he just didn't quite know what was going on. He was upwind, so had no idea, and got kind of curious. And so he like looked. Luckily, he kind of lost his track and came to circle downwind. Chandler was able to swing the camera out, get on him right over my shoulder, and I made a perfect shot on him. He went like 40 yards and crashed. So really, really cool buck. I think he ended up going like right at 160. And so that was 2 years ago. I shot this deer, and then like 2 weeks later killed this Kansas buck. So that was like probably my best, definitely was my best year ever as a whitetail hunter. This was out in Kansas with my buddy Cody Cook from Heartland Pride Outfitters. They run an outfitting business out there, and we've been hunting with them for a really long time. And that's one thing that we tried. We don't do a whole lot of outfitted hunts. Obviously certain ones like Alaska, you have to be accompanied by an outfitter or guide. I just personally enjoy the whole process. I don't need my hand held and say, oh yeah, go sit in the stand, there'll be a buck there. Like that doesn't really do anything for me. So, we really enjoy the whole process. And Cody and their guys, they're great. They obviously run a top-notch outfit, but they allow us to kind of run and gun and do our own thing, which is awesome. So they'll say, we got some cameras on this property. Here's kind of what the bucks are, but like have at it, hang your stands, do your thing. So we always show up, we always scout, try to figure stuff out. And this buck was like on this particular farm that we were hunting, he was like the only buck. And he was like, all right, this is the buck that we're going to be after. And I had made up my mind before, that it was him or nothing. And so we hunted hard and saw him for, I want to say like 4 days straight we had seen him. He was just rut crazed, like just cruising, chasing does. He was not locked down, but he was just running everywhere, all over the place. And we just couldn't intercept him. We tried the decoys. We tried getting out in the open. We tried hunting pinch points and just could not get in front of him. And finally, I think after like the 4th night straight of seeing him, we actually saw him again, just cruising. And sometimes we would like rattle and like bang the horns, and he literally was just so rut crazed, he wouldn't even pay attention. Well, fortunately, this night he did not have a doe with him and was just looking for something. And so Brandon saw him, and I rattled the horns together, and he picked up his head, and he looked, and then he kept on going. I was like, oh no, so I rattled again. And then the second time he really got interested, came right to us on a string, and I was able to shoot him at like 37 yards, 40 yards. He kind of skirted us a little bit on this like old road, but again, made a great shot on him. He went right over the hill and died. He was right at 170. So this same year I killed the 160 and the 170 in Kansas, and I killed a 180 in Colorado. So that's by far my best year ever as a whitetail hunter. We got some Missouri bucks here. These two. This is the old decoy buck. We called him Little Louie. If you guys know old Tim Wells, he always calls him Big Louie. Big Louie, that's what he calls all the big bucks. And so I was like, I'm gonna call Buck a Big Louie, and then he looked just like this, only this one was a little smaller, so I called him Little Louie. I killed him in November over a decoy, and it was crazy. He just came in, postured up, blew the decoy into pieces. And most of the time when they do that, they spook and you don't get a shot. This deer, though, he blew the decoy up, and actually I thought, oh, it's over. He ran off, and then all of a sudden he's like, wait a minute. He's like, dang. He's like, I'm tough. He's like, I knocked him over. I was like, I'm gonna go check him out. It starts to come back. I was like, oh yeah. And so we're in a hay bale blind. He was to the right, so it's kind of hard to shoot out of that redneck blind because there's a small window if they're way to the right. And so, Joel, who was filming, was on the right side, so I had to like scoot over a little bit to get the right angle. And he finally came enough to give me a good shot, and I was able to make a good shot on him. So that was like one of the most intense hunts. This is old Chubbs, and he's not much to look at size-wise necessarily, but with that Wyoming buck, he's close. This buck for sure I know was 7 years old, 100%, which is crazy because most of the time deer, we're kind of guesstimating ages, like, when they're 2-ish, 3-ish, okay, we can say for sure within, plus or minus a year. But this deer had a blind eye on one side. And so I literally was like going through trail cam photos, and it was like December, January, and I was doing late season photos, and I see this just big, fat, puffy, like 1.5-year-old Forky. And I was like, and he only had one eye shining. I was like, I'll save that photo just in case. 2 years old rolls around, and boom, there he is, one eye, and he still had that same eye. 3-year-old, he never really was a really big deer. 4 years old was probably maybe his biggest, I want to say. He's a big mainframe 9-pointer. And then I actually shot him. He came in early season. I nicked the top of his back on opening day when he was 4 years old. 5-year-old, I don't know if I had many encounters when he was 5, maybe a couple. When he was 6, he came in again early season, just kind of skirted us on the edge of a food plot like 38 yards. I'm not kidding you, ducked out of his mind, and I nicked his back again, same exact spot. So I'd shot him twice, and he's 6 years old, and just glanced the top of his shoulders both times, and never did have another encounter with him when he was 6. Finally, when he was 7, I finally got the opportunity, and he was feeding in the bean field. And actually, it was funny, both times I missed him before, like 20 and 38 or something like that. And he was feeding the bean field, was coming towards us, and then all of a sudden was turning to leave. And so I was like, all right, and he's 55 yards, just perfect, double lung, just bomb. And he crashed right in the field, and I was like, oh, finally got my chance at redemption with old Chubbs. So Chubbs was his nickname because he was just literally he was kind of a stocky, short-bodied deer, but I mean, just a brute, just bully, just heavy deer. So old Chubbs never did display much on top, but he was thick, boy. He was thick. Got a few others over here from some different Euro mounts. Another Wyoming buck. Another couple of really cool Kansas bucks from out there at Heartland Pride. Some Texas bucks. This guy right here, this is old Barbed Wire, and I'm sure if you guys have followed HB for any sort of time, you've remember this buck. This is from the 2013 season, I want to say. We just dropped this video on our YouTube channel as well. Crazy hunt. Typical, I don't know, my wife always liked to say, like, Mike never shoots one on the first day. It's always the last day. And I say, hey, I like to get my experience out of it, right? So, but man, just typical Western hunts, man. They're just a grind. And I'm the kind of guy that, like I said, I don't get hung up on shooting the biggest and the baddest or whatever, but I like the best possible deer that's on the property. I want to give it my all to catch up with them. And so we hunted this deer hard and got close a few times. Finally, towards the end of the week, 6-7 days, whatever it was, we happened to spot him, and he bedded down in a spot that was more or less like just a temporary lay down spot. So he laid down and was definitely going to move. I mean, the sun was coming up, was going to hit him. And so we made a move as quick as we could to get on him. We got up on him. Sean was with me actually filming right over the shoulder. And then we had one of our guides running the camera back behind us, Dustin, with the long lens. And I don't know what happened when we got up close. I kind of like popped up, looked at him. I could see his tines. He was like probably 25, 30 yards. And we were going to draw back and pop up. Well, everybody was getting situated and ready. I had an arrow nocked ready, and I'm watching him. And all of a sudden, I just see him whip his head back towards us. Like, they just have that sixth sense. And I was like, oh boy. I was like, here we go. So I draw, and he busts out of his bed, bounds off. And this never happens, especially in Nebraska. Like, you see it in Alberta, deer that don't see humans. In Nebraska, deer don't stop. He turned around like 60 yards and just stopped and looked. And I'm at full draw, and Jeremy, my buddy, had a rangefinder, and I'm like, how far? I'm like, how far? Like, he's not going to stay there forever. And Jeremy, he couldn't get a range. And finally, he said 60, 65, whatever it was. And I just settled in and let it loose. And fortunately, he was an old buck and wasn't very quick to react. So the arrow got there before he ran off, because it was a longer shot, but perfect double lung shot. And this is my biggest mule deer ever with a bow. So pretty special one. Old barbed wire. We call him barbed wire. Just obviously super unique rack. Just curves up and has little tiny bumps and kickers off of everything. And so pretty wild buck. Unique for sure. The beams turn way up, almost like flames. Then back here behind the bar, we've got a few more Euros. Another buck I shot with the Lindsays down here on the far end. Shot that on Jeff's Illinois farm. He was gracious enough to have me out. Some Missouri bucks here in the middle. Kansas buck and another Missouri buck. So I got a couple sheds here. These are some big, this is probably one of the biggest sets, one of the prettiest sets that I have. It's a super chocolate horn. Pretty cool deer. This was him the year before. Pretty special deer. Never was able to catch up with him. He kind of vanished. This is the actual skull from the bear. Pretty gnarly. You can just see just the giant teeth, but you would not believe the amount of meat that was on this thing. I mean, just all around here on their jaws. I mean, there's no question why they're so strong and powerful. And that's pretty much the extent of the old trophy room. Give you a quick sneak peek in here in the old archery shop, where I probably spend more time in here than I do my upstairs office. Seems like sometimes, especially this time of year. Yeah, I end up setting up most of the guys' bows here. I really enjoy. I shouldn't say I enjoy. I don't enjoy the tinkering process as much as a lot of people do. But I'm a perfectionist, and I want my bow shooting perfect. I want to shoot bullets, and so I've always, enjoyed dialing in my bow and like making sure things are set up and proper. So all kinds of goodies here. But we're all about to take off for the fall. But we'll go back to the bear real quick, and we'll wrap things up with the bear. So this was like a bucket list hunt of mine ever since Cole, was my brother's best friend growing up, ever since he went up to Alaska and started doing these brown bear hunts. I was like, man, someday I have to do that. I need to go on that hunt. And so we kind of talked back and forth, and it's one of those hunts, like I said, you have to be accompanied by a guide. You have to get tagged through them, and so opportunities are kind of few and far between. And he ended up calling me one year and had a cancellation, and was like, man, can you get in? Can you squeeze in and do it this spring? And I was like, absolutely, let's make it happen. And he kind of warned me before. Brown bear hunting's crazy. It's different. They're extremely sensitive animals. They have a great sense of smell, and you just don't want to booger them. And so it's really a patience game. And so I did a spring hunt in Alaska. So you go out in the spring. We were hunting on the river system, but the bears are, for the most part, coming out of hibernation, and they're just like foraging, looking for any food. The berries haven't greened up yet, so they're looking for deer kill, and most of the time they're up high still. It's Kodiak Island, so elevation-wise, not that high, but they're in the mountains. And so we were camped down the river, and every day we would just hike up probably like a quarter mile, half mile to our little glassing knob, but we'd sit there and glass, and you could see 4 or 5 miles in all directions. Days were 17 hours long. In the spring, just not much darkness. So we sat there for 17 hours a day, basically every day, and glassed. And we'd see bears, but we're looking for a big mature boar. You can only shoot a boar or a sow that doesn't have cubs. They're tough to identify sometimes, but we're looking for a specific bear. So we just sat there and we'd see, okay, yeah, that's a young immature boar, or there's a sow and some cubs. Actually, the first day made a stalk on a really big boar and almost killed him. But being archery hunting, like, you don't take any chances. It wasn't a great shot opportunity, and so I opted to pass. I was like, first day, no problem. 12 days later, here we are sitting on this glassing knob, and our eyes are about to bug out of our head. We've been glassing for so much, and actually spotted this boar working away from us. And so we hauled tail to get up on him, and we kind of lost him in some alders, and we weren't sure if he kept going or if he laid down. And so our options were just to sit down and call. And so, being a spring bear hunt with a bow, that's what you do. You call them in. So you use a fawn in distress call. And so we sat down. Cole starts calling for 4 or 5 minutes. Nothing. So he kind of looks at me. I think it'd been like 10 minutes. He's like, "What do you want to do?" He's like, "We could try roaring at him like another boar and challenge him." And he's like, "It's gonna work one way or the other. Either he's gonna spook because he's not the mature boar, or he'll get curious and come check us out." And so, sure enough, he starts doing his whatever he does and starts growling, and I hear this twig snap, and I'm like, oh, I hear something. I look up and boom, here he comes out of the alders. comes directly towards the call, of course, you know, and they don't have great eyesight. They're really hyper focused, like close range, because they don't have any predators. They're not worried about anybody. So they're just focused on what they're eating and what they're foraging on. And so he starts coming towards the call. Well, he gets to the point where he's, I don't know, 30 yards, and he sees us. There's, you know, me, Cole, and 2 camera guys in these alder bushes, so we're not super well hidden. And so he sees the blob of us and our camo and gets curious. And instead of, he was coming on this trail and was going to come by broadside at like 25, 30 yards, he comes directly to us. And I'm like, oh boy. And so like we had talked about shot placement before, like they're very tough animals and you don't want to make a bad shot, because if you do, then Cole would end up shooting him with the gun, or best case scenario, give me and I shoot him with the gun, which I didn't want to do. And so you just don't take a frontal shot, because their head is so big it blocks all their vitals. Well, all this is going through my head as this bear is just boom, boom, coming in, his shoulders all broad, and I'm just like, all right, what's gonna happen here? And so Cole said, go ahead and draw. So I draw back, and he doesn't turn, he doesn't keep going, he comes directly towards us, even closer. And I'm like, okay, he's getting really uncomfortably close. He's about 15 yards now, and he takes a few more steps, about 12 yards, and there's like a little mound, and he like kind of sees us, and he puts his hands on this mound and like raises it up and starts like looking at us like this and exposes his chest. And Cole says, shoot him. And so I'm like, at that point, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, you know, and I'm full draw, and I got a spot, I'm like looking through my peep, and all I see is brown. Like it's so close that there was no way for me to like pick a spot. So I like look up, make sure I'm like aiming in the general direction. I kind of hone in a little bit and release the arrow, and smoked him perfect right through the heart. Actually hits his shoulder blade. The arrow goes through his heart, hits his shoulder blade. His arm kind of flings back, it deflects. And I later found out when I covered him, but full pass through, came out of his hind quarter. And so it was just crazy. I can't believe, man, it was just a crazy moment. Like almost one of those surreal, like everything was like in slow motion in my mind. Like I wasn't nervous. I was almost just like really, really focused and like, don't mess this up. I mean, Cole of course had a gun, but 12 yards, right? So, and I'm not a big gun guy, but it's a big gun. So that was easily it's one of those hunts, like slow and boring for the, you know, until it's not. And it was the most intense hunt of my life in that moment. So that was pretty crazy to see him topple and go down. I mean, just a ton of emotions flowing, excitement. And then like also the fact that like 12 days of a 14, the tag's only good for 14 or 15 days. So we were down to the wire, been sleeping in a tent off the grid for 12 days. So it was a pretty emotional moment for me. So that was easily the most intense moment of all the hunts I've ever been on. I'm still pretty partial to these whitetail and these mule deer back home, but I do love hunting the bears. So that's pretty much a wrap for the trophy room for the most part. We got some stuff up at the farm, and we got some stuff at our office, so we may have to do another tour here soon. But thank you guys for joining us, and check out our YouTube channel. Check out the show. We got new episodes dropping all third quarter, season 14 of the show. So appreciate you guys tuning in.